Good afternoon. So glad that you all were able to join us this week at the Gaylord Rockies for MTO Spark Tank. So this is actually my second time here at this particular Gaylord. I was here pretty much exactly 4 years ago this week, July 2021. I was here for the National Contract Management Association World Congress event. And being that it was 2021, we were still very much in a COVID posture. So, people were wearing masks. I think most of the restaurants and bars were closed. And aside from that particular week, there happened to be a heat wave that came over Denver. So it was, over 100 degrees out here. So very glad to be out here in much better circumstances this time. So I'm Brian Knuckles from DARPA's Contracts Management Office. My team and I, we handle the solicitation and contracting aspects of the MTO programs. So for those of you, who have been DARPA and specifically MTO performers before, there's a pretty high likelihood that you have engaged with somebody from my team. So this is going to be just a high-level contracting overview. So it's primarily aimed at those in the audience who are new to DARPA, but hopefully there will be some nuggets in there for the old timers in the room too. So before you can get to the DARPA contracting stage, you have to be aware of the solicitations, DARPA solicitations that are out there. So I'm going to talk about two techniques that you can use to make sure you're staying abreast on what's out there. The second technique, even better than the first. So the first thing you can do is follow DARPA on sam.gov. SAM is the system for award management. It's the site where we post all of our fully competitive, unclassified solicitations. So you simply sign into your account, which by the way, you are required to have an active registration in SAM to receive a federal contract. You search for DARPA, so you go to the search function, specifically to the federal hierarchy. Start typing in DARPA's name in the search bar. It'll recognize that you're searching for DARPA, and you go to the little DARPA page and click follow, and then that should then notify you of all DARPA activity on sam.gov. It may not be as reliable in terms of the email notification, so I highly recommend this second technique, and that's through the DARPA website, darpa.mil. So you go to the R&D opportunities link on the upper right-hand side of the page. You click on that. That will then allow you to select any of DARPA's technology offices. So given that this is an MTO-centric crowd, so you would select MTO, and then that will bring up whatever the active solicitations are for MTO at that given time. And it's actually not just solicitations, it's essentially anything that we have released to the public or anything that's out there for the public. It could be a special notice, a request for information, or a solicitation. So now that you are actively tracking DARPA's solicitations, I think it'll be important to just have a basic understanding of what the award instruments are that we utilize for MTO awards. And so I'll go through these one by one, but just to kind of preface it, there are two main categories of award instruments. There are acquisition instruments and there are non-acquisition instruments. Acquisition instruments, mean that we are actually accepting and, requiring delivery of the technology that's being developed. Non-acquisition instruments are basically support and stimulation of a research area for a public purpose. So the first two I'm going to talk about are acquisition instruments, and the second two are non-acquisition instruments. So let's dive into these. So first of all, procurement contracts. These are kind of the classic federal award instrument. These are governed by the Federal Acquisition Regulation, the FAR, and for DARPA, because we're a DoD agency, also the DoD FAR supplement, the DFARS. And as an aside, you may have heard that one of the Trump administration's initiatives is essentially directing an overhaul of the FAR. So that process is underway. They've actually coined it the revolutionary FAR overhaul. So fingers crossed, we may be headed for a much less unwieldy version of the FAR, hopefully in the not too distant future. But procurement contracts are traditionally, or I should say historically, most applicable to traditional defense contractors. The major defense contractors that have kind of spent decades navigating this system and have actually set up their business processes, specifically to navigate this system. I say most applicable, certainly not exclusive, but that's kind of what you think about when you think about a procurement contract and kind of who that is most targeted towards. Speaking of the business systems, at DARPA for our procurement contracts, for R&D purposes, we use pretty much exclusively cost reimbursement contracts. And to be eligible for a cost reimbursement contract, you need to have an adequate accounting system. And in the DoD world, that means that it has been reviewed by the Defense Contract Audit Agency, DCAA, and found to have no material deficiencies. So that is kind of one eligibility criterion for procurement contracts. So the next two instruments I'll talk about are other transactions. And just kind of a brief history of other transactions. So other transactions stemmed from a recognition that, for S&T purposes, innovation was no longer driven by the government. Innovation, is now driven by the private sector, and so there needed to be another mechanism by which we could attract some of the key drivers of private sector innovation to do business with the federal government, that may otherwise not be interested in trying to navigate the federal procurement contract landscape. So DARPA was granted other transaction authority in 1989, and actually it was first other transactions for research, which is the second instrument I'll talk about on the next slide. That was expanded to other transactions for prototypes in 1994. So these have proven to be a very valuable instrument for DARPA, for our programs and for our revolutionary, R&D efforts. These are commercial-like instruments. They're intended to mirror kind of what a commercial entity might work with on their own commercial business dealings. So the FAR and DFARS do not apply. So we're not constrained by those. It allows for more flexibility in terms of terms and conditions. It allows us to pivot more easily. If the R&D direction takes us a slightly different place, and they're milestone driven. Milestones are kind of the crux of OTs. they're set up so that you're accomplishing milestones kind of on the path to the ultimate completion of that effort. And as you accomplish a milestone, you get paid a set amount for that milestone, up to the ultimate price of the agreement. So other transactions for prototypes, we use those more commonly. In fact, they're actually approaching our usage of federal or of procurement contracts in terms of frequency of use. As the name might suggest, an OT for prototypes requires the delivery of a prototype. And prototype can take on a number of different things. It's not necessarily a piece of hardware. It could be a model. It could be a process. But the key is that there has to be some defined prototype that is delivered, at the end of the effort. Some of our DARPA programs utilize OT for prototypes agreements exclusively. You heard from Mike Sangelo this morning. His AMI program is one such program, because that's pursuing an advanced material manufacturing technology. So we utilized OT for prototypes exclusively for that. Other transactions for research. These are also commercial-like instruments. The FAR and DFARs don't apply. The difference is that these are in the non-acquisition instrument bin, if you will. These are intended to advance the state of the art in a field. The results are really intended for validation and verification, and not for delivery of the technology to the government. So that's one key differentiator. Another nuance of OTs for research is there is a default expectation of a 50-50 government and performer cost share to the maximum extent practicable. So not a mandatory requirement, but sort of a default starting point. And the reason for that is kind of highlighted in that box I have at the bottom, is that these instruments are often used for dual use by design research that that Whitney had kind of touted this morning. Where there's a commercial application of the technology and there's a defense application of the technology, and so both parties are kind of committed to that same end goal. Again, milestone driven, just like with OT for prototypes, just a slightly different purpose. And we've also had recent programs that utilize OTs for research exclusively. You'll hear from Mike Holmes tomorrow. He's the managing director for the NGMM program, Next Generation Microelectronics Manufacturing. That was one such program, where it's squarely in the OT for research realm, because it is basically developing a pilot line capability for 3D HI microelectronics breakthroughs. And then the fourth instrument are grants and cooperative agreements. These are collectively referred to as assistance instruments. As procurement contracts are kind of the classic, federal award instrument. These are kind of the classic, support and stimulate a public purpose instrument. These are, really most commonly awarded to universities, for basic research or applied research. The FAR and DFARs don't apply to these either. They're governed separately by 2 CFR 200. DoD grant and agreement regulations. Grants and cooperative agreements are not applicable to many DARPA programs, including a lot of MTO programs, because you can't involve control unclassified information. You're not, there aren't, technology is not being delivered. You're not getting a prototype. So, we certainly have some of these in the MTO realm, but they're not as common as the other types. Okay, so now that we have talked about how to stay abreast of DARPA solicitations and kind of what the award instruments are that you can expect. So let's jump ahead. You've submitted a proposal. It was evaluated against the criteria in the BAA, and it was selected for a potential award. So now what? So this is kind of where my team engages. This is where you would have the first direct engagement. I mean, we would have been involved in the solicitation process, and you may have heard from us at proposers days and things like that. But this is where you would have the direct contact with us. And so we have what we refer to as the fact-finding stage. And so this is where we have gone through your proposal that was selected, and we've determined whether there are clarifications or additional pieces of information that are still needed. Is there support that's lacking to fully substantiate your price? For maybe labor rates or vendor quotes for equipment or subcontractor documentation. So taking a step back, we highly encourage you to try to preempt this process, via your proposal. Basically convince us that your price is fair and reasonable. By substantiating, all of your cost elements in the proposal. I mean, that would then preempt the fact-finding process, and it would be a much more efficient award process. And which kind of brings us to negotiations, because DARPA's objective is to minimize or ideally eliminate negotiations. We want to get to the award, so that the programs can kick off, performance can begin as soon as possible. So we're taking some steps to try to help facilitate that. In all of our solicitations, we're including model award instruments so that you have an advanced idea of what the terms and conditions are. In some of our solicitations, we're establishing, a fee and profit range, so that there doesn't have to be any back and forth, prior to the award process. And then specifically for other transaction awards, you have kind of a unique opportunity to also really tout the value of your proposal, specifically in the context of another transaction. So in the table I've got on this slide, on the left, those are examples of some things that you could potentially tout. If you've proposed cost share, I mean, there's obviously, value in that. Do you have some commercial business practices that have been implemented that will have a direct benefit that you can document? Are there aspects of simply the use of an OT that you can document? Measurable, quantifiable things that where the government is getting a benefit by virtue of using an OT as the award instrument. On the right column there, those are some things that wouldn't fly. Sunk costs, future value that's not really quantified. So, basically you have the opportunity to convince us, especially for OTs, there's this additional concept of value, above and beyond, just your price, what value is wrapped up in that. So highly encourage you to consider all that so that we can, make the award process as efficient as possible. Okay, so we've gotten through the award process. The post-award process is really the opportunity to get into the performance, see your game-changing solution to fruition. I mean, that's where you'll be working towards completing your milestones. You'll be technical reports on a frequent basis, technical interchange meetings with the PMs, with the PM, and then contract modifications. Just want to briefly mention contract modifications because those are also part of the post-award process that you would be involved in with with my team. Contract modifications can be either unilateral or bilateral, depending on the nature of them. Unilateral just means that the government alone signs the modification. Bilateral means that both parties have to sign in agreement. Most modifications, will be bilateral, but there are a couple of instances where the government can just sign, and that's if we're just giving you additional funding. Incremental funding, we call it. We would just sign that modification because we're not changing the terms and conditions of the contract. We're just giving you, more funding up to, that total cost. If we're exercising, an option in accordance with the terms, that we had preset for that option, and we're not changing anything, we would just exercise that unilaterally. No cost period of performance extensions, those would always be bilateral, and actually my next slide, I'll speak to that specifically because those are pretty common in the R&D landscape. And then task adds, we may recognize that there's an opportunity for additional tasks that had not been originally foreseen. Obviously with R&D efforts, things are constantly evolving, and so we may recognize an opportunity to revise the statement of work to add additional tasks. So we would work with you to effect those. Those would always be bilateral as well. As I mentioned, no cost period of performance extensions are pretty common in the R&D world. So this is when you have recognized that you need more time to complete the effort at no additional cost to the government. So it's a time extension. And so, we ask that you please make those requests to the contracting officer, obviously, looping in the DARPA PM, no later than 30 days prior to the end of the current period of performance so that we have enough time to get everything in place to execute that extension. And then I'll highlight those last three sub-bullets there, just in terms of the information that you want to make sure that you provide to us so that we have a clear picture as to the need for the extension and kind of, where you are. I mean, really, the PM should already be in the loop because you would have been reporting on a regular basis, but this helps capture, that specific updated moment in time, your remaining available funding unexpended, the reason for the extension, and then the program impact to granting or not granting the extension. And then finally, this is my last slide. This is a plug for an opportunity, an option that we have in the MTO office-wide BAA. The MTO office-wide BAA, and every DARPA technology office has their own office-wide BAA where it's open continuously. We refresh it typically annually, but it's always open, and that is so that we can capture and so that you have an outlet to submit your proposals for breakthrough technologies whenever they materialize. So so that you don't have to wait for a program that's aligned with that technology. So for the MTO office-wide BAA, we do have this accelerated award option where we would make a commitment to you to award the contract within 30 days of notifying you that your proposal has been selected in exchange for just agreement to some stipulations that are in the contract, which they're pretty reasonable stipulations. It's under $2 million, no classified information, things that would typically prolong the award process. So I want to plug that. That's available for contract awards and other transaction awards. These are for what we call seedling efforts, because they often inform new DARPA programs, and so we're always looking for good ideas through the MTO office-wide BAA, and this accelerated award mechanism I think is a mutually beneficial opportunity. So with that, I hope that you have a great rest of the Spark Tank, and I look forward to working with you on future DARPA contracts. So thank you.